Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we're tracking a really massive shift happening right beneath our feet in the tech world. You know that introductory promotional era of AI pricing? That honeymoon phase where everything felt totally unlimited and frankly, incredibly cheap? Well, it has officially ended. We're entering a brand new reality where the meter is running and the bill is finally arriving. We are going to break down exactly what this means for developers, for enterprises, and really for everyday users like us.
$500 million. Just let that sink in for a second. According to Axios, that is the absolutely staggering amount one unnamed enterprise managed to run up in a single month on their Claude tab. I mean, imagine being the finance person opening up that bill. No way, right? So how does that even happen? Well, it turns out this massive technology company had handed out employee AI licenses with absolutely no usage caps. It was just a complete free-for-all. Costs were just piling up without a single checkpoint until someone finally bothered to look at the ledger.
And the crazy thing? This wasn't just a simple mistake. It was actually a symptom of a much larger corporate culture issue, something called token maxing. This perfectly highlights a bizarre side effect of corporate gamification. Companies were actually setting up internal leaderboards that treated AI usage volume, literally the sheer amount of tokens consumed, as a proxy for employee productivity. So you have these environments with zero financial governance, practically begging people to just burn through compute as fast as possible. Because of this, Axios actually reported that another major tech company burned through their entire 2026 AI budget by April. Okay, let's dive into Section 1. The bill arrives. GitHub's meter starts. This shift really set off alarm bells across the developer community around June of 2026. This was the exact moment those hidden costs suddenly became incredibly visible to individual users, not just enterprise finance departments. For the longest time, developers just got to enjoy this flat rate, $10 subscription for GitHub Copilot. It basically felt like an all-you-can-eat buffet of AI completions. But on June 1st, GitHub introduced token-based AI credits, where one credit equals exactly 1 cent. Now, while basic autocomplete remains unlimited, anything complex, we're talking agentic coding tasks, model-assisted code review, multi-step workflows, all of that now runs directly on the meter. The outrage from developers was immediate. Users literally watched their entire monthly credit allotments vanish in a matter of hours on complex tasks. That comfortable, unlimited ceiling was just gone.
Moving right along to Section 2, history repeats itself, the tech arc. Now look, if you're panicking a little bit, just take a breath. Because if we step back and look at the bigger picture, none of this is a crisis. Actually, it's simply a market repricing that completely rhymes with every single major computing shift we've seen before. Think about it. In the early days, mainframes were defined by absolute scarcity. Machine time was so insanely expensive it had to be strictly rationed and scheduled. Then came personal computers, which kicked off an era of compute abundance. You just sat down and worked. Next, early cloud computing hooked everyone with incredibly low promotional pricing that seemed radically cheaper than maintaining your own on-premise servers. But eventually, as cloud adoption really locked in, that infrastructure became a massive line item at production scale. Today, mature AI is just entering that exact same metered production phase.
Actually, there's a quote from Tech Reader magazine that just hits the nail on the head here. They wrote, "The meter was always running. It just took time for organizations to notice how fast." And that's absolutely crucial to understand. The physical infrastructure costs to run these massive AI models were always very real. They were just temporarily subsidized and hidden from the end user to drive adoption. We've just finally reached the inflection point where that strategy is no longer sustainable.
All right, Section 3, the price of capability, the frontier tier.
So when we look at the absolute top of the AI market, those incredibly powerful, state-of-the-art frontier models available to the public, we really have to confront the massive costs of building and running them. These models are now carrying price tags that would have seemed completely extraordinary just 2 years ago. And it's not arbitrary pricing. The real-world training costs are astronomical, and the inference costs, the compute required every single time you ask the AI a question, are just massive at scale. These models are increasingly designed for institutional buyers who demand serious enterprise security. Because the costs are so steep, it's forcing a massive shift in corporate thinking. Organizations absolutely must ensure that the value of the output genuinely justifies the premium cost of the input.
This brings us to Section 4, the rise of good enough and budget math.
You see, when those premium costs just aren't justified, this absolutely fascinating market dynamic takes over. Think back to the 1980s home video market. The technically inferior format actually won out because wide availability and a lower hardware price mattered way more to people.
price is a feature. The AI market in 2026 is essentially running a hyper-fast version of this exact same story. Just look at Google's entry AI subscription. In February of 2026, it was $7.99. By June, a mere 4 months later, they slashed it to $4.99. That is a nearly 40% cut. And get this, they didn't just cut the price. They simultaneously doubled the included storage from 200 gigabytes to 400. This is the consumer subscription layer actively repricing itself to stay competitive as all of us users become way more cost-conscious.
And honestly, maybe the most striking data point we have right now comes from OpenRouter, which gives developers access to over 400 different AI models. By April 2026, a massive 46% of all developer traffic was flowing straight to cost-efficient Chinese origin models. What makes this absolutely staggering is that back in late 2024, those exact same models accounted for under 2% of traffic. So why the massive shift? Well, it's definitely not a story about benchmark supremacy. In fact, OpenRouter noted that these high-volume models actually ranked outside the top 10 on standard intelligence tests. No, developers are choosing them because input pricing runs at literally a fraction of a cent per million tokens, compared to several dollars per million for the Western frontier models. That is an order of magnitude price difference. When a model costs significantly less but produces output that is completely adequate for the workload, well, the budget math wins every single time.
Which leads us to our final section, Section 5, the market finds its tiers, the new normal.
So, what does this all mean for us? To put it simply, this isn't a crash. It's not a conventional price war either. It is simply a maturing market finding its natural segmentation, exactly like every single computing technology that came before it. At the very top, we've got the frontier models, maximum capability at a high cost, strictly for high-value institutional workloads. Right in the middle, we have the mid-market, these repriced subscription tools fighting for everyday consumers and general developers. And down at the bottom, a rapidly maturing local and cost-optimized tier, featuring open-weight models like Google Gemma that you can run on your own hardware, plus budget APIs for cost-conscious apps. Look, the mainframe didn't disappear when the PC arrived, right? It just found its tier. Cloud computing didn't disappear when companies started optimizing. It found its tier. AI is doing exactly the same thing right now.
Which leaves us with one final, vital question to ask ourselves as we enter this mature, metered phase of AI. Is your organization paying for frontier capability it actually needs, or are you just letting the meter run? It is seriously time to check your workloads, double-check your budgets, and make absolutely sure you aren't the next company waking up to a $500 million surprise. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I highly encourage you to take this question back to your own teams today.